Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to be talking about Dungeons & Dragons in its 33rd year of history, the year 2006, and we're going to talk about it through the filter of clear. Catalyst, location, entity, artifact, relationship, clear. All right, so who is the catalyst for Dungeons & Dragons in the year 2006? Well, it's a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Tweet, and Jonathan Tweet is a critical game designer. He was lead design for Dungeons & Dragons during 3rd edition. 3rd edition is, specifically 3rd edition, is Dungeons & Dragons under a corporate model, right? So, basically, Dungeons & Dragons was under TSR. TSR was a bunch of gamers who turned themselves into businessmen and were like, let's do good at this business thing, right? You know, were very determined, right? But they were like, kind of forcing them, oh, let's go do some business, you know, let's get away from the table. Then it moved to Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast is a really unusual, I don't think there are many companies like Wizards of the Coast at all when it was just Wizards of the Coast, right? Because under Peter Atkinson, it had really almost the perfect blend of passion for games and incredible business savvy and business effectiveness, okay? So it's kind of really unusual, right? But Hasbro, at this point, 3rd edition, Dungeons & Dragons is owned by Hasbro. It's under the Wizards of the Coast umbrella, but the reality is absolutely no small company is ever truly free of the larger company it's held by, right? At any time they can come in and they can say, do X. And often those larger companies don't even come in and say, do X. They'll say what they need very subtly, right? They'll be like, hey, Jonathan Tweet, what if we went this direction? Or let's give this a thought. And even when when your boss is just saying, let's give this some thought, you might give that more thought than the thought you had in your own head, you know, if it's getting close to bonus time, you know, like it's hard for small companies to be free from these global concerns. And that's what Hasbro is. Hasbro is a multi-billion-dollar global corporation. And now, under 3rd edition, D&D is fully a corporate product, right? It's a global product. This thing is, people understand fully. And here, with the 3rd edition, for the first time ever, there really is a sense of what is at stake with each Dungeons & Dragons book, right? This is a global product. This is an element of Americana. This is American history. This is global history, right? Like, the books that come out are not just part of gaming culture. They are part of almost like of American export, right? You know, and in 3rd edition, Jonathan Tweet builds a strong, very playable, beautiful edition that is really, really embraced, right? And Jonathan Tweet, the point of it is he's one of the first lead designs to really deal with a multi-billion-dollar corporation saying XYZ should happen in Dungeons & Dragons. And I think he managed that really well, but he's a very critical designer, and he does the job of, is the druid balanced, right? But he also does the job of, we're only going to convert this game into 7 languages. So be aware of the languages your game will be translated into. Oh, and by the way, this nation, we will not be converting it into their language, right? And so when you're at Gen Con, you're thinking, Horatio, it's so good to see you again. And then in your mind thinking, I'm not going to tell you that this year we're choosing not to translate the game into your native language. You know, like the things he had to deal with were more, frankly, more than what Gary Gygax had to deal with in game design. And boy, right now we're on 5th edition, right? And there was an incredible amount of really, really careful thought about what went into every sentence that went into every book. Every attribute of every image, every piece of art is thought about from a global context, right? And 6th edition, oh my goodness. I think the number of things that are going to be considered beyond, is the druid balanced? That are coming external is going to be massive, right? And also the movie, right? So the movie too, because when you talk about the movie, there is things at stake that are just like so far beyond what what you would normally think, because there are billions of dollars on the line with the movie. And just to be clear, if there's ever a successful Dungeons and Dragons movie, that could absolutely trigger a revival that could double or triple the amount of people that are playing Dungeons and Dragons easily within 5 years, right? It could mean everything for the game. And if there is another, like, essentially critically and commercial failure, which the 2000 movie was a critical and commercial failure, at the macro level, then that sets Dungeons and Dragons back. It says you're on the back, you're on the back lines again for another 10 or 20 years until people can forget this another failed attempt at a film and say, no, D&D is a niche product, it's not a mainstream product. I truly believe in my heart that D&D could be as big as Star Trek, it could be as big as Star Wars, and but it needs that movie, and it's important. So Jonathan Tweet is the first real design lead who has to deal with this. Okay, all right. What is our location for the year 2006? Well, it is Osberg Ridge Line Trail. Now, this is a mountain biking trail, world-class mountain biking trail in Sun Valley, Idaho. Right, and the reason why we're choosing this is Dungeons and Dragons is being played in Sun Valley, Idaho, right? And people who are riding that mountain biking trail on $8,000 carbon frames, right, are also running Dungeon Master, are also being Dungeon Masters, and they're being players, and they're even being designing third-party games, because third-party products for Dungeons and Dragons, because this is 3rd edition. And the doors have been swung wide open, and they're saying, hey, just follow this one, this few rules here, and you can make a 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons product that you can sell and get your own money for. And the open gaming license for 3rd edition is truly incredible. It innovates the commercial aspects of a tabletop role-playing game product for many, many years to come, and it's really important. So, but also, Dungeons and Dragons is a let's sit down and play this at a table, right? It's a sedentary aspect, and more D&D designers, D&D dungeon masters, and Dungeons and Dragons players are looking for ways to exercise. And Osberg Ridge Line Trail in Sun Valley, Idaho, is one of the places where, when they're not at the table, they're getting exercise beyond the table, and also very much exploring their world, right? Who is the entity in 2006? Well, the entity is Alison Bechdel. So Alison Bechdel is a really interesting lady. She is an author, very talented author, and she wrote an incredibly important book called Fun Home. Fun Home is it's an LGBTQ story, and it tells the story of a girl who is growing up with a father who is kind of trying to determine who he is, right? And what his preferences are and what his preferences aren't, while he has a wife and he has a daughter. And Fun Home it is somewhat of a misnomer. It's actually quite sad, and it is a very sad book when I read it. It struck me as a sad book. Although some people might not walk away with that from it, but the other thing that Alison Bechdel is really important for is the Bechdel test. So the Bechdel test was something that Alison Bechdel talked about, because she would look at films and she would say, I'm frustrated with these films that are being made, and the reason why is they're focusing so strongly on male characters that it's unfair, right? And so she brought forward the Bechdel test, and the Bechdel test is, in your movie, do 2 females talk to each other about something other than a male, right? One of the main male protagonists in your film. And, that seems like an incredibly easy test. And once she had said it, people went back and applied it to just literally thousands of movies. And it was shocking how many movies failed this test. It was even shocking how many movies that were on like the Criterion 100 failed this test. And so going forward, every savvy director would look at their film and say, okay, does this pass the Bechdel test, right? And also, if you released a movie and your movie didn't, pass the Bechdel test, it said to everyone out there, oh, I'm not a savvy director. Like, I don't understand what's happening in the culture today. I don't understand, overall narrative design in today's environment, right? And that in today's environment, it's not enough to tell a good story, your story needs to be inclusive, and it needs to include different people of different types and genders, and in different aspects need to be explored in the structure of who you're using to tell that story. So Alison Bechdel is a really important person in the year 2006, especially for everyone who tells narratives. Excuse me. All right, now what is our artifact for the year 2006? Well, it is the Dungeons & Dragons basic set black box, okay? It is the 2006 Jonathan Tweet black box, okay? Comes out in 2006. It's a basic set. It's a basic rules black box starter set, right? That comes in a cardboard box. It is black. And Jonathan Tweet is design lead when it is created, okay? So here you have this situation with also at this point we have 3 core rule sets. We have PHB, DMG, PHB, 1E, 2E, 3E. And here we see the 3rd edition of the game getting a starter set, right? A box where you drop your $20 down. I think this one might have been 25 or 30. And you get a much, much slimmed down, simpler version, a smoother, more careful on-ramp for players that don't have the time, inclination, or tolerance for complexity to tackle 700 to 900 pages, 700 plus pages of content that you have to read if you read the PHB, the DMG, and the Monster Manual, right? So this is a smooth on-ramp, and it's really critical because here if we have 3 triumvirate core rule books, if we have the PHB, the DMG, and the MM in 1E, 2E, and 3E, and now we're placing down another 1E, 2E, 3, and now a 3rd edition of the starter box, right? We have a tradition, right? And by the way, this, 3 core rule books, all hardback, all 200 plus pages, that has been honored in every single edition, all the way up through 5th edition. So one of the things is if 6th edition breaks from any of those traditions, it is a broken tradition, right? And people who are students of the history of the game can say, you have broken with core tradition, right? And now maybe the game isn't what it always was, right? But one of the things that I'm super happy about is no designer, they can say, hey, I can innovate within that framework, but I'm not going to break that framework. Because if we break that framework, does the game still stand, right? And the reason why is it's making both people happy. It's the people who want high crunch, it's all right there for them, right? In the DMG, the MM, and the PHB, right? But for the people who are like, oh, I heard that was fun, man, and they're daunted by 600 pages of content, there's this smooth, easy, cheap on-ramp for them. I have forgotten that. The other thing is you can't get those 3 core rulebooks for less than $100. Nowadays, it's hard to get them for less than $150, right? So, the fact that it's a frugal option, the fact that it's an option for people with lower tolerances for complexity, it's a really, really big deal. All right, what is our relationship in the year 2006 for Dungeons & Dragons? It is identity, all right? So one of the things, Dungeons & Dragons has a really unique relationship with identity, okay? So I'm a player character. Actually, Sally and Sarah and Jane sit down for a game of Dungeons & Dragons, right? And Sally says, welcome to my game. I am the Dungeon Master. Who are you going to play, Jane? Who are you going to play, Sarah? And Sarah says, I'm going to play Emily the Dragon Slayer. And Jane says, I'm going to play Derek the Elf Archer. And then, Sarah says, wait, your character's a dude? Right? And she says, yes, my character is a dude, right? And this gets into entity. This gets into identity, right? So Jane in IRL, in real life, is a lady, but the way the person she's playing is a man, right? A gentleman, right? And that's different. And she's saying, hey, I'm already a lady. Right? I want to explore what it's like to be a gentleman, right? And in the game, she could do that, right? But then if she chooses a wizard, that wizard who her character is a gentleman can polymorph into a woman, right? And so basically in our own lives, we're locked into what we are unless we decide to spend a ton of money, right? A ton of time and research, right? So generally we can, even in IRL, we can change who and what we are, but the difficulty of that can be immense, especially for many different people. And not everybody has the same resources, right? But in Dungeons & Dragons, everyone does have the same resources, right? And changing your identity in Dungeons & Dragons is a choice. It's nothing more than a choice, right? You can be a man or a woman, and then that man or a woman can morph into a different man or a woman, right? And so if there were questions you had about gender, right, you can answer some of them, certainly not all of them, but you can answer some of them within Dungeons & Dragons. And so Dungeons & Dragons serves this really unusual purpose of exploring identity. And then that's at the far end of the realm, right? But even just the idea, me, Scott Garibay, right? I've played Kindwin, and Kindwin was a half-orc cleric, right? Now, I'm not a half-orc, right? And I'm not a person named Kindwin, and Kindwin had a great singing voice, but I don't have a great singing voice, right? And, Kindwin also was able to herd sheep. He had, a background as a shepherd, right? And these are really important things because I don't have any of those, but in Dungeons & Dragons, it doesn't matter. I can choose the identity I want, and I can explore all the aspects of that life that are attached to that new identity. And this is incredibly powerful. This is so powerful. This idea that I'm not locked to my one identity, and I can explore any identity I wish, is one of the greatest aspects of the game, right? And I've talked about all these other designers who have brought forward all these other tabletop role-playing games, and they all do it too. They bring this idea of, that's one of the reasons why all these other core rulebooks for games that are not Dungeons & Dragons are owned by Dungeons & Dragons to some extent. Every core rulebook, every new TRPG that comes out, Gary Gygax owns a part of that, right? At the ethereal level, he owns a part of that game, right? Because he brought forward this game that made identity exploration as rich as walking down a forest trail and seeing what was there. And it's one of the most beautiful, most wonderful, most celebrated, most used aspects of the game. So Dungeons & Dragons has a deep and abiding relationship with identity, okay? That is a clear history of the 33rd year of Dungeons & Dragons history in the year 2006, right? What about you? Have you ever used Dungeons & Dragons to change your identity and then walked away with some, really with an epiphany, with a new understanding, with a life lesson that you didn't have before you played that character? I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and I want to thank everybody who has done that. Thank you very much. It means a lot to me. And thank you, as always, for every comment that I get, and thank you for viewing as well. And thank you just overall for your support of this channel, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Take care.